Continue. Awesome. So again, hi everyone. This is Jessie with the Office of Service Learning and Civic Engagement. This is our second speaker series. Today we have with us Brenda Brooks. She is the Executive Director for Crew Land and Water Trust. She has been on them working with Crew for, Brenda, how many years have you been with Crew?
16.
Woo! 16. She has her MS in Environmental Science from FGCU, and then she has her BS in Environmental Science and Geography from Stetson University. So she does a lot of incredible work here in the community. She's one of our leading female executive directors, and we're so excited to have her here today. And without further ado, I will pass it off to her.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen and get started. Share. Okay, am I good to go?
Yeah, you are good.
Okay. All right, this is strange to have everything up here. Let me move this. All right, hi everybody. Jessie, thank you for the introduction. For you guys that have never been to Crew, you're going to learn a little bit more about Crew, and if you've been to Crew, you're going to learn a little bit more. I titled this Crew and You because I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about what Crew offers you, what you can do, what Crew does for you, and what it does for the community. And I put a lot of really great pictures in here. I'm thinking probably 99% of these pictures come from our volunteers, and these are all from Crew lands. So let me go ahead and, okay. So the first thing is the question comes up, what does Crew stand for? It's an acronym, and it gets really long all the time to say this, but it's Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem. So it's much, much easier to say Crew. And I certainly wasn't there when we named it, but it makes a whole lot of sense that we are Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem. You'll understand a little bit more about this very, very shortly. So the next question is, let me go. There you go. Okay, so what is Crew? It's a little bit confusing because it's a project, it's a place, and it's also an organization. You will not be tested on this at the end, so don't worry about it. So the next question is, how is Crew a project? We've been around since 1989, and it's been all about partnerships. And on the screen, I have logos of the partners that we most commonly work with, but there are so many more, including FGCU, that have they've been involved with Crew since their inception, essentially. So the South Florida Water Management District, that's our lead agency. Down below is Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. I'll show you a map in a little bit. They're going to be what I always call the heart of Crew, the very center of Crew. You'll also see Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. I refer to them as FWC. Conservation Collier is Collier County's conservation program. And then up above that, you'll see Lee County 30,000. So that's Lee County Conservation 2020 program. And again, these are just a few of the partners that we work with. So how is it a place? You know, first it's a project, now it's a place. And these pictures, once again, are all coming from Crew. So the big deal is that this is the largest intact watershed in Southwest Florida, and it's a 60,000 acre watershed. That's a huge amount of area, so big that it spans Lee and Collier counties. Now, when we first started out with this in 1989, actually probably about the mid 1980s, people started to put this all together. There was nothing acquired. To date, as of just a couple of months ago, we're just right at around 55,000 acres being acquired. And that's quite impressive with a 60,000 acre watershed. And again, I have to give a shout out to all of the partners for making that happen. And when we talk about our partners, not only do we talk about being able to acquire the land, but it's really important that you manage this land in perpetuity. So when we talk about these 55,000 acres, that land will be there forever and ever and ever, and it will not be developed. This is a map, and I have this up a little bit later too, just to be able to show you a reference. Let me show you. Jessie, will you be able to see my pointer on the screen? Yay, nay? Well,
yeah.
Oh, you can see it. Okay. So this entire area that I'm going to outline here, this area and through here is going to be the Crew area, and it includes the blue as well. This map can be a little bit confusing because it also ties in north of here where the purple area is. That's going to be the airport mitigation area. So when the airport expanded years ago, they needed to mitigate for that property. And so they purchased land farther east. The great thing about that is it connects with Crew, so it's a corridor. If you've ever driven out Corkscrew Road, right past Alico, you'll see where the road comes up a little bit, and there'll be really tall fencing on both sides, the north and south side of Corkscrew Road. And that's an underpass. It's a wildlife underpass, and it's used very heavily by wildlife. And so the wildlife will use that area to the airport mitigation and then back down. And not far from here, FGCU has mitigation land as well, and it's going to be on the north side of Corkscrew Road. But we'll break this down a little bit more, but I just want you to see how large this area is. The blue area that my pointer is at right now is Camp Key Strand. North of that is Lake Trafford, so that's going to be in Immokalee. But if you continue to go down south, south through Camp Key Strand, you'll see that that drops into the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge, Fakahatchee, Picayune, and Big Cypress Basin. Now, generally, the water from our watershed will head south and more westerly out into the Gulf of Mexico. That's where most of the water goes. However, some of that water will go south through Camp Key Strand and eventually ends up into the Western Everglades. Now, if you're a small animal, this probably isn't going to be as important to you. But if you're a bear or a panther, if you think of a large species that needs a lot of space, this is really important wildlife corridors for wildlife species. And then this map also just shows up in the northeastern area, what we call OK Slough, Dinner Island, Spirit of the Wild, just really some wonderful habitat that we have here in Southwest Florida. So how are we an organization? This was the third part. I said, we're a place, we're a project, and we're an organization. So the Crew Land and Water Trust, we were formed in 1989, and we are a 501c3. And our general mission has always been, I don't know if it will always continue to be just this, but it really comes down to preserving and protecting the 60,000 acre Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem Watershed. Initially, our role in the beginning was to help acquire land. And we still do that, but there's not as much land to acquire since we have 55,000 acres acquired. But our role has really changed significantly over the years because as we acquired these lands, we had to educate people on the value of these lands. While we're doing that, we want to make sure that the public has access to these lands. It's really important that I feel that most people realize that we do not own much of the land at all. We have some small parcels. The major landowner is going to be the South Florida Water Management District. 13,000 acres is owned by Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, and then both of the counties involved as well. So because this land is bought with basic taxpayer dollars, there should be public access to those areas. And that's what we fight for. We currently have 4 trail systems to provide those public access areas. And again, we continue to work with land acquisition with our partners. And our lead agencies, the immediate partners that we work with is the South Florida Water Management District and FWC. So what does Crew do for you? And I made this sort of a short list, but to me, and I always say that Crew is always about water. And you'll see that come up over and over and over again. I make sure that water's in a lot of the pictures. But the most important thing about Crew is this is a recharge area. It's an aquifer recharge area. If you're from up north, a lot of people are used to their water coming from surface water, rivers, lakes, streams, reservoirs. Most of our surface water is going to be salt water or brackish water. So we get our water from deep down in the ground in the aquifer. So having these natural lands, it's just a wonderful area for water to be held on that landscape for as long as it wants to be. It percolates down through the aquifer and is there for us when we need it later. It also provides flood protection. So if you took that 60,000 acres and we just built development upon development and shopping center, that would not be flood protection. You would have what we call a lot of storm runoff. In this area, it allows the water to just stand on the land. Because you have plants and soils and trees, they naturally will filtrate the water. So the water at the beginning of the watershed, after it flows through this watershed, it will be cleaner. It'll have a much better water quality. So if we're going to set this amount of land aside for water, it becomes a perfect area for wildlife habitat. And then, if you can see, we're a little bit down on the list. Recreational opportunities is going to be down below water. It's going to be below wildlife habitat. But again, we still feel that it's important for you guys to have recreational opportunities on these areas. But first and foremost, Crew is about water. So here are some more pictures. You and Crew over on the one side, you'll just see a list. And this is just a short list of the most common things that I think people want to come to do at Crew. And there's all sorts of things. Brenda Thomas is on here. I had to put wildflowers up on the top there for her because that's her specialty. Some people love history of the area. They tie it into the Calusas and the Native Americans and how all of that is connected. Hiking is primarily the biggest thing. A lot of people will do biking. Biking is just permitted at some of the trails. The picture that you'll see with all the folks in, that's going to be at Bird Rookery Swamp, as well as the picture that you see in the very center. This is Bird Rookery Swamp. Obviously, photography is a big thing, or these photos wouldn't be on this slide right now. But this is very typical Bird Rookery Swamp trails. It's an elevated tram system from years ago that there was logging that was done. So that gets into the history part of it. Wildlife geocaching is a big thing. If any of you guys geocache, we have over 100 geocaches at Crew. And they are switched up about every 3 to 4 years. We work with a great group of volunteers that do that. So geocaching is a huge thing. If you don't know what geocaching is, definitely check it out. And you can geocache anywhere. You can geocache at 7-Eleven on 41 if you want. There's probably a geocache there. But in Crew, they're going to all be in more natural habitats. Primitive camping, if that's your thing. We do have quite a few folks from FGCU that will come out and camp. Hunting, they just finished up turkey season, wild turkey season for the first hunt. They're in their second hunt right now. Each of those is just a couple days, but they're all quota permit, so you have to pull a special permit. Running, horseback riding, and again, I'm going to get back down to water because that's real important. So these are the trails, and I want to get into each of the trail systems just a little bit so you're comfortable. This map was done by a colleague of mine many years ago at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, and it's just always been one of my favorites. It's a fun one. So you'll see that these are lettered, and we're going to go through. So here's going to be the Crew Marsh area where my cursor is, and that's going to be at letter A. Letter B is going to be the Cypress Dome trails. Our most southern trailhead is going to be Bird Rookery Swamp. And then the one that we just opened, I know this one says opening soon, but we opened this in 2018. Was it? Yep, 2018. And that's Flint, Penn, Strand, and that's going to be off of Bonita Beach Road. I want to go back and give you an idea of how big the 60,000 acres is. So if you're going to be up at A and you're going to be at the Crew Marsh Trail and you want to go the whole way down to Bird Rookery Swamp, whether you want to go through Immokalee where the bear is, or if you want to come down 75, it's about the same. It will take you about 55 minutes. And that's a really large area. So let's move on. So the first one will be the Crew Marsh Trails. This is the first trail system. It's got the most infrastructure. If you look at the very center picture on the bottom, you'll see a bunch of kids that are up on an observation tower. This was probably a field trip. That field, or this particular tower, overlooks a 5,000 acre sawgrass marsh. That's the headwaters for the entire system. That's where the water collects and it flows southwest, or it flows down eventually into the Western Everglades. There are over 5 miles of combined trails here. So and we just switched these out. These used to be named trails, but we just switched them out to color-coded trails. We just have a few more posts to put in. But if you went out tomorrow, you could certainly find your way through the colors right now. The neatest thing about the Crew Marsh Trails is it's very diverse habitat. You can get through all the ecosystems that are listed here in about 2.25 miles. So if you want to see some variety of habitat, this is certainly the place to go. This is a hot spot for hiking. Birding is a good area. Again, geocaching here, but geocaching at all of them. This is one of the areas that no biking here. And this is where a lot of our educational programs will be. So again, this is the Crew Marsh Trail and a little bit of infrastructure in this area. There'll be a couple boardwalks and a boardwalk. One of my favorite areas is going to be the boardwalk back in the Potash Slough, if you've ever been there. People often ask me, what is my favorite spot in Crew? Crew's so big that that's just a very, very unfair question, so I can't answer that. But what I will say is that I don't have one particular spot, but I do have a favorite spot within each of the trail systems. So in this one, in case you're wondering, it's back in the Potash Slough. The Cypress Dome trails, this is going to be the closest to the Crew Marsh Trail. It's going to be off of Corkscrew Road, and these are going to be the trails that will be closest to you if you are at FGCU. The neat thing about this particular trail system, again, it's got a lot of diversity in its ecosystem, but this one connects to one of our partner preserves, and that's called it's Conservation Colliers, but it's called the Cara Prairie Preserve. If you don't know what Cara are, and I should have put a picture in here and I did not, but Cara is an incredible bird. It eats carrion. You'll often see them alongside the road with vultures. They're very skittish, very tough to find, but they are in Cara Prairie Preserve. Again, that's why we named it after that. There are over 6 miles of hiking trails here. And again, they're interlooping trails. So you can go out and do 1, 2, 3, you can make it as long as you want. There is a beautiful buck that you'll see there that was taken there. This is also a program that Jesse was instrumental, picture with some students there. And this is our Soil Rocks program. This is specifically for 2nd graders. And then down below, I don't know if you can find that alligator hidden in there, but there's a bit of a canal area along this one of the trails. And this alligator, it's not unusual to see an alligator in this area. This is one of 2 areas where you can do horseback riding. We do not have horses. You have to bring your own horse and you have to pull a permit. There's also primitive camping here. And in order to do primitive camping, you do have to pull a permit. It's quite busy. We only have 2 sites. They're apart from each other, nowhere close to each other. So if you do decide you want to go primitive camping, remember, there's no water, no electricity, there's no toilet. You have to be able to bring your shovel and dig a hole. But if you come out to do camping, the beautiful thing about it is that when you come out, you are the only one there. So if you're solo, you want to do a solo camping experience, you'll be the only one there. And if you have a group of people, then it'll just be your group as well. This is one of the 2 areas that you can hunt. All right, let's move on. Let me get my cursor over here. Crew Bird Rookery Swamp. This is the one that's our most southern. It's going to be off of Immokalee Road in Naples. This is by far the most visited trail system. The new map, we're working on this right now. You will not see this yet down there, but we are in the process of switching this over. It's the exact same trail. It's just where you have your letters A, B, C, D, and E. Those were numbers before. So we just wanted to update and made sure that you really understood that this is a 12-mile loop. The yellow-black trail is the area. And I often tell people it's like a number 9. So if you start at the parking, let me get my cursor right there. So here's the parking area. If you do that and you go and do the whole number 9 and come back, that is 12 miles. And again, this is the same picture with the otter and the alligator earlier. You'll see biking in the center photo. It is a great place to bike. This is not where you take your skinny tire bike. Hybrid bike, you're going to pedal, but if you can get those knobby tires or a good mountain bike, those trails are sandy, grassy, and oftentimes wet. Again, you are going to be in a watershed. So all of our trails will be seasonally wet. This is an incredible place to go to see alligators, and you have to be good with alligators and understand alligator behavior. This is the time of year, well, not so much so right now because it's warmed up a bit. A few weeks ago when it was really cold, this was definitely the place where they were sunning themselves during the day, just to try to build up that body heat. And in the evening, they will be tucked back in the water because it's just a warmer place to be. Sometimes people misunderstand alligator behavior because they think just because they're coming along that that alligator needs to move. If that alligator had to move every single time a person came, they wouldn't ever get to warm themselves up. They would spend all their energy doing that. So oftentimes they will just lay there because they just physically can't move. They just want to warm up. So that gives you an idea of that particular area. It does not have the diversity of ecosystems that the other ones do. It's predominantly bald cypress and red maple swamp. It is a beautiful area, but that entire 12 miles, you will see that same type of habitat, often water on both sides, and again, great habitat for wildlife. Because these trails are long linear trails, and that's because the old tram system, the old railroad that came through here to do the logging of the cypress, you have that ability to look a long distance in front of you. This is a great place to see wildlife. Bears, very common. Otters are very, very common in here. Of course, gators. There have been a few panthers spotted, bobcats as well. Definitely, and deer. Trying to think of everything else. There's just so much wildlife that lives within Crew. And again, it goes back to that wonderful habitat that we provide. So this is our last area. This is Crew, Flint, Penn, Strand. Remember I told you that Crew, we spanned Lee and Collier County. So the area, the two trail systems that are off Corkscrew Road, that seems like they should be in Lee County. They're very, very close to Lee County, but they're not. They're actually in a Immokalee address. This is our first trail system that we were able to open up in Lee County. It's very easy to get to. It's going to be about 5 miles east of I-75. The other trailheads are going to be about 13 to 14 miles east of I-75. So it's very easy to get to. I do want to point out this map to you. This again has interlooping trails and it's color coded. I just ask that people are patient with us because as soon as we feel like we've really established one of these trails, and again, it's only been open about 2 years, then we hit the rainy season. All these trails are very much underwater during the rainy season. It is perfect for wet hikes. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if it's something you ever want to try and you aren't very comfortable going out by yourself, make sure you reach out to us because we do guided hikes. We do wet walks for sure when the trails are wet. So in this particular area, you'll see this orange loop that comes over here. You'll see these bodies of water, the lake, but I want you to take note of this purple trail. This is not officially open yet, but this purple trail is going to connect you. And right where you see my cursor, it's going to be right above the 3 deer, the white-tailed deer. This is going to be bird rookery swamp. So that upper number, let me see if I can go back one. Where did I go? No, let me go back up. Here we go. All right. So do you see where the purple trail comes in here on that western boundary? That's going to be the purple trail from Flint, Penn, Strand. So let me go. There we go. So this is that particular trail. The neat thing about this is if you really are a distance person, biking is perfect for that. People that are trail runners, people that are distance runners, they can go out and get some serious mileage in this particular area. Parking is never an issue down here. There's 3 parking areas and the main parking area is quite large. There is horseback riding and hunting here as well. Hunting will be, the great thing is when we lay these trails out, all the hunting will be north of where our trail systems are. Now, it might just be just north, but you don't have to share that same space. And there's only 5 hunt seasons throughout the year. So that's not something that goes on all the time. Horseback riding, again, you have to have your own horse and be able to pull the permit. If you're a birder, this is a great place to go. And if you look at the photo in the lower corner, you can just see the diversity of birds, and you'll find those in the lake area. Roseate spoonbills, you'll see in this photo wood storks. Occasionally we'll get a flock of white pelicans in. The water fluctuates. As a result, the bird species and the diversity will fluctuate. This is a good time of year, though, to see that. So currently there are 3 trail systems in this area and connecting to Bird Rookery Swamp. The second picture over, I want to point this out. This is a red-headed woodpecker. These are quite rare in a sense that we just don't see them. We have great habitat for them in some areas of Southwest Florida. It's just not, it's a rare sighting for me. I don't get to see these very often. Our most common woodpecker will be a red-bellied woodpecker. People often confuse them with a red-headed woodpecker, but when you see the two side by side, it's a distinct difference. If you see the picture right next to the deer, and again, these photos are all from Flint, Penn, Strand. This is what the trails look like this past summer and during the wet season. They are this wet. So when you want to do a wet walk, you are walking through these areas. It's absolutely gorgeous to do that. And I would encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. Not everybody, it's just a Florida thing that you can get to go out and walk in the swamp. So I'm going back to this map again, just to give you an idea of where we just traveled. So again, up here in the northern portion at your red star, that's the Crew Marsh area. This is the Crew Cypress Dome area. The Crew Bird Rookery Swamp area is the one that is like the number 9, the elevated tram system. And then Flint, Penn, Strand is the area that's directly left. It's interesting because even though these two areas are adjacent to each other, we call them different names because Crew is so big that we have to break them up into units. We also break these two up in units because Flint, Penn, Strand is Lee County. This is the county. This is the county boundary. Bird Rookery Swamp is in Collier County. These two areas are completely different in habitat. So my challenge to you is if you're going to go to one of these trails, make sure you try to hit all of them because they're all very different. It's not like one of those areas you go and there's a couple different areas and it all looks the same. It doesn't work that way with Crew. And again, it's just because it's so big. So what's my connection to Crew? If I'm not mistaken, Brenda Thomas, Jesse, you're in that picture in the bottom. This was a great day that we had. We were out in Bird Rookery Swamp. We were working on vegetative studies. So my connection to Crew is, I've been here for 16 years, but growing up, I grew up in an inner city. I wasn't connected to nature in any way. My parents, gosh, the closest I might've gotten was a gray squirrel at a city park. So as I got older, I had a few friends that I would go to their cabins. I never really got to go to a camp, but I did get to go to cabins in the woods, and I started to slowly get connected. I went to college later in life. I had a first career, and I didn't go to college until I was in my mid-30s. I was so excited. I stuck right through it until I got my master's. I knew I wanted to do something outdoor. I just wasn't quite sure. So I took all the science courses I could, and I just love terrestrial. I like terrestrial ecology. I was a scuba diver. I did all of that. I enjoy it, but I didn't want that to be my work. I still wanted that to be my play. It turns out to be, this is still my play area as well. The top picture, this is Bird Rookery Swamp. This is an old trestle. It's an old bridge years ago. So if you ever do that entire loop, you'll hit this spot. It is absolutely my favorite spot in Bird Rookery Swamp. And I think it's my special spot because you really have to make an effort to get here. And then up in the other corner is my absolute favorite bird. They just arrived back from South America. These are the swallow-tailed kites. We have quite a few that nest at Crew. We always knew that they nested at Crew, but it's only been in the last year. Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, They started to study these birds. Every year they'll go out and they'll monitor their nest, how many fledglings they have, how many young leave the nest. Last year we had over 70 nests that they found in Crew, and that's just a small portion of Crew. So these are a very special bird to me. It's just my connection to Crew. It looks like I'm sitting on the water down below. I'm actually sitting on a log. So that's that was a fun day for me, one I will never forget. So up here, this is just one of, we have about 60 volunteers. Tom is a volunteer that came to us maybe about 8 years ago, and he's from Minnesota. He has wildlife cameras up there. He wanted to understand wolves in Minnesota and the predation, because he was having so many that he felt were eating the local deer. Interestingly enough, he didn't like wolves to begin with. And the more that he started to photograph them with the wildlife cameras, he started to understand and see their connection within the greater scheme of this world that we call of wildlife and its purpose. So these are pictures that he has taken all at Crew. You can see panthers. In fact, he just sent me a photo that he recently captured in it's going to be close to the Crew Marsh area. And it's his first panther kitten of the season, which is great. Now, if you see the photo where I'm pointing, these are going to be bobcat and bobcat kittens. So just so you know, these are bobcats and these are panthers. Always look for that long tail. And then you do have a Florida black bear. That's a big boy. The skinnier one was in the beginning, which was probably a subadult. This is a younger panther in the lower. And then these are 3 turkeys. I love this photo because they're trying to get the attention of the female. I don't know how interested she looks, but these are the turkey. And this is a very coveted species. It's the Osceola turkey. Beautiful, beautiful in the sunlight. So if you want to connect to Crew, and if you haven't done it, or if you maybe want to do it in a different way, there's all these different opportunities. You might have already been to Crew on one of the field trips. Some of the colloquium classes come out, some of the geology classes come out. But again, you can come to Crew on your own. These trails are open 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year, from sunrise to sunset. We do programs. We do our official Crew Trust programs, but again, feel free to come out on your own and explore those trails. My favorite program that we have is Nature's Peace. This was a program that was established by one of my volunteers probably about 8 years ago now. George Luther wanted to work with early onset Alzheimer's patients, so we reached out to our local community partner in Naples. We started to work with them. It turned out to be such a great partnership, and he wanted to expand that. The next group that we reached out to were those visually impaired. So the photo that you see here, this is a talking post. We had gotten this with a grant. You go up and you push a button. Each button, there's 4 buttons. We record those. What is Crew? What is a watershed? We can change those at any time, whatever's relevant at the time. And so we worked with this particular group, Lighthouse of Collier, and they said that they would work with us to put Braille on that. So that's what this particular picture is showing. Wonderful program. So how can you connect to Crew? And we went through a bunch of these already, but I wanted to point this out. And there's the recreational side, and then I want to touch base with service learning. So up in the corner, or I'm sorry, up at the very top, I have Bike the Loop. This is Bird Rookery Swamp. It's that wonderful 12-mile loop. And our official term, if you bike it, hike it, if you crawl it, however you decide to do it, if you do the entire loop in one day, we call you a looper. So I challenge you to go out and become a looper. Here, the darker picture is, it was a biologist that worked for us, but now she works for Conservation Collier. She had a group out and she was camping. I think this might have been at the Cypress Dome trails, but again, we have 2 of those primitive campsites. It's just a gorgeous area to do that. The lower photo shows you geocache, and you do not have to have the official GPS unit. You can just get a GPS, you can just get a geocache app for your phone and head on out and have fun finding the over 100 geocaches that we have. Now, the other 3 photos that I put over here, these are going to be a little bit more recent. One is well, you can see the real recent ones because everyone has masks on. But we do a lot of service learning with FGCU. We have had that partnership for many years. Whether the students, as students, you want to come out and you want to do trail maintenance, or you want to, that's our biggest thing. We always need trail maintenance. We're really lucky because they always help us do Adopt a Road to make sure that trash gets cleaned up. There's all sorts of other programs that we do as well. The students up above, we are working on beautifying this particular area at the Crew Marsh Trails. This is Suzanne's Pavilion. The donor for that recently passed away. So some of his friends got together and said, hey, what can we do? We want to honor Ed. So we're working with them on this right now. So we're beautifying this area. We're putting native plants in. And I think this was a group, I can't remember if it was Civic Engagement. I think it was a Civic Engagement group. And so they took this big project on. Now, oftentimes you can just contact us and you can just sign up for a service learning day. I know there was one done today. There will be one done on Saturday, but we have scheduled quite a few since COVID, and we are fortunate to be an on-site service learning through COVID. Since we can't do our field trips, they have all, I don't want to say all, but I would say 88% are now virtual. So because we don't have as many field trips, we have taken advantage of that time to clean up the trails, beautifying the area, and having these opportunities presented with the FGCU student. So please, if you're interested, you don't mind being outside, getting wet, dirty, it is very gratifying to come out and help us clean up these areas. So that's certainly how you can connect with Crew. So I really hope to see you on the trails. These are some great photos again that I love. This lower corner, this was a field trip. This was a homeschool group. The kid came out and see, he's not even intimidated by a little bit of water. He certainly got immersed in the watershed part of Crew, had a great time. If you'll see any of my happy pictures, just like the one up above, Jesse, you're in that photo. And your brother's in that photo too. This is an area, this is Flint, Penn, Strand. We are monitoring these areas after a hurricane just to see how wet they were. So I really do hope to see you on the trails. Our website is there. It's very easy, crewtrust.org. And if you want to reach out to us, you can either do it. I have my email here on the next one, Brenda@crewtrust.org. And I can direct that. We have there's 3 of us full-time staff, and we can talk with you about any service learning opportunities. But I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to stop my share. And if you all have any questions, I'm available. There you go.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel like every time we do virtual claps, you can't actually like hear the clapping portion.
No, but I see you up there. I love you have them. Thank you.
I do have a question. If unless anyone else does. Okay, so what would be, and I love this one because it's like, because Crew's so connected to our water system, what would you say is like one of the biggest misconceptions that you find that you have to kind of correct when people think about like drinking water, where water comes from? Or
the biggest, it's been this way for 16 years. People come here and they don't understand that we would have any water issues. They don't understand water restrictions. That's a big one. What do you mean I can't water my yard? There's water everywhere around us. And again, it goes back to where we get our water. So yes, we do have water all around us. It's why so many of us love living here, but it's salt water and brackish water. And that is not usable by us. We can, Bonita Springs Utilities does have the ability to do that. But if we get into a real desalinization plant, boy, is that expensive. And it really increases our drinking water. I don't think that we have a true value on drinking water. I know both you and Brenda Thomas have heard me say this many times. I don't know if we'll understand the value of what water really costs until maybe we have to buy bottled water to flush a toilet. You know, how many bottles of water does it take to flush a toilet? And if you had to pay every time you went to the bathroom, maybe then you would get a bit of an idea of what the value is of water.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I do have more, unless anyone else does.
Well, I want to ask you, Jesse and Brenda Thomas, did you guys get to see you guys in there in your photos? Did you see?
I did.
I did.
I saw some of my students in there as well.
You did. So for those of you that don't know this, Brenda Thomas and Jesse both worked at Crew. They were our education coordinators. And now Brenda Thomas is one of my bosses. So it's funny how things switch around, isn't it, Brenda?
It is.
And it was fun when Brenda Thomas was there because it's not the most common name. I was obviously Brenda with the gray hair. Brenda with the brown hair was Brenda Thomas. But she is on our board. Again, we are 501c3. I have a board of 30. It's a big board, but one of our board slots is FGCU, and it's shared by Brenda Thomas and Billy Gunnels. And we've had an FGCU position on our board, I think from the inception, since 1989. It was John Fitch many, many years ago. So I'm up for questions.
Yay. Okay. So as you know, as a nonprofit in the area, what advice would you give to students when reaching out to like community partners or to reach out to you to serve, you know, in terms of etiquette, reaching out, having that conversation of like, I want to come out in front, you know?
Yes, the best thing that I would say, because I love passion and I love when people reach out to us, we really like it. And this is true, I would think for every nonprofit, we love it when you reach out to us and say, what do you need? What can I do to help you? Now, we try to make it a really good service learning, but sometimes it is as simple as doing adopt a road. That trash is terrible and trash attracts trash. So those are things that we need. It's not unusual for us to get an email or a phone call and somebody says, you know, they've never been to Crew, but they want to go and they want to do A, B, C, D, and they've never even checked to see if those are our needs. If it's something, sometimes it's something that we're already doing and we're doing well. Sometimes it's something that we might be doing, but we could use a little help with. It's great if you have your own ideas, but don't ever forget to don't forget to also include what do you need? What are our wants and needs?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. And I have one more, but anyone else? Anyone else?
Come on, I have no more questions than this. It was so good. Everybody's tired because it's later in the day. Okay, go ahead with your question, Jess.
Okay, thanks. So when you think about service, I would like, it's kind of a 2-point either or. What would you say in terms of the importance that service played in your life before a nonprofit, or the importance of service as you are in a nonprofit and like, you know, serving in a community and that kind of like civic engagement?
Yes, it's been my life. It's how I've gotten every job that I've ever gotten. I don't know. There was one job that I applied for over all the years. And I was an adjunct at FGCU for a while. I taught environmental humanities, so I got to work with students there as well. And I always told them to take advantage of any time you can volunteer. And I know that you guys need, how many hours do they need? 80 to graduate? And I'm just going to tell you. So if I open up a position, for example, and I get a bunch of applications, if anybody comes from FGCU and they say, and I have 80 service learning hours, well, that's great, but so does everybody else. They graduated from FGCU. It's a requirement. Awesome that you guys are doing it. I love that part of the university, but what sets you aside? And I will tell you, for example, Jesse, I'm going to use you. Jessie did her internship with us after she graduated. So she didn't even need an internship. Now, it's great to do an internship, and you guys sort of pay to do it because you have to pay for credit. So maybe Jessie was smart because she didn't have to pay for the credit. But nonetheless, she committed 130 hours to our organization. She didn't even need that. And ultimately, that turned into a job for Jessie, because What happened is that we all worked with her, and when the position opened up, she was right there, and she had already proven herself. So when I tell you guys to make sure you take advantage, and even if you don't think you want to do it, the most valuable thing you can learn is what you don't want to do. I've done internships that I'm like, whew, so glad I've done this now. It's so easy to walk away when I'm done with however many hours I have to put in. I will never do this again. I don't ever want to do it again. But that's so valuable, because sometimes some of us are still trying to figure out what we want to do when we grow up. And it's easy for us to not know what we want. So get out there and say yes. Get out there and say yes when it's uncomfortable, when it's like, for example, for us, we do things when it's still wet. And some of the students are like, we're going to go out, we're going to get our feet wet, we're going to be up in our knees in water. And you get out there and it's so much fun. It's cooler. So when it's really hot, that's good. But, step outside of your comfort zone. I've always said that unless you step outside of your comfort zone, you don't ever really have that room for personal growth. So be comfortable in the uncomfortable and don't hesitate to go there. So say yes, yes, yes. It's how I've gotten every position that I've except one.
No, that's awesome. And like, I just tag on, like, be cognizant of who you're around and who you might be taking classes with and who you might be working with and the students that are around you, because I would have never have known that the class that I would have taken with Brenda would have led me to volunteering there, which would have led me to interning there, which would have led me to a job, right? And like, I've been hired by three of my faculty members. So thinking through too, like all these interactions that you're having with people really could lead towards something in the future, but just like putting your best foot forward in those situations is a really crucial one. That's awesome. Thanks for that, Brenda.
So can I put Brenda Thomas on the spot as a board member? I know you think you're walking away, but not yet. So being there as a previous employee, and now my boss, and then being at FGCU with Colloquium and having so many of your students involved, I mean, what would you say to people? What would you say to students coming out to Crew?
To Crew specifically?
Well, you can do it for any of our partners. This is a community effort.
Yeah, I would emphasize what both of you said. So my first, you and Jesse both, my first experience with Crew was as a volunteer. I volunteered at a wildflower festival when I first moved to Fort Myers to start my educational career at FGCU. I think within the first few months, I was volunteering at a wildflower festival and then ended up at Crew as an employee. The connection between FGCU and Crew is longstanding. I think one of the first pictures that you had up there, B, was Wynn, long-term study plot doing his course. So, there's a longstanding connection between FGCU and Crew. I'm sorry for leaning over. Brooke is reminding me that it's like 10 minutes until supper time.
Oh, you have, yeah, she's got her dog. Okay.
But I do think, students need to take advantage of service learning and as Jesse said, to be aware of who it is that's around you. I've had a number of students who have taken their service learning project and turned it into employment, or at least established a connection that then led to, a couple of steps later, employment. So those are important things to keep in mind, because oftentimes it's not just what you know when you leave with that degree, but it's who you know. And those kinds of networking opportunities are critically important.
And the experiences, and just having the exposure to those experiences.
Yeah, when you fill out an application, a lot of times what I have found recently, when I was leaving UF with a second master's degree and was applying for jobs, it's what it's the degree that you have, but it's also the experiences that you have gained along the way. A degree is one thing and education is one thing, but more and more employers are looking for the experiences that you've had. Yeah.
And I just, on a funny note, I have to laugh because, and I know that you have all experienced this. How many times, and now that we have these big jobs and full-time jobs, and we get something on our plate and we're like, I don't ever remember having that in a college course. And there's been many times I've reached out to Wynn Everham and I'm like, Wynn, I never had this in any of your classes. Like, can you help me out? But you put the pieces together. And it is the experiences, it's the courses that you take, and it is the connections that you make. Yeah, and the networking. So I'm going to throw Lisa Page. I'm going to pull you up. So remember when you connected with Crew years ago, but I'm sure you probably still you still feel somewhat connected to Crew.
Well, one, because you guys are near my house,
That's good. That's good.
It's awesome to know that I could go down 82 and boom, I'm right there. I'm sorry I've missed in past years the Wildflower Festival, because that was always a big hit, as well as stargazing out there. And it's a beautiful property. And I, like you, I grew up in the inner city. We didn't have, we had parks, but not like Crew.
So you had gray squirrels too?
Well, we had gray squirrels, we had rats, things like that. So, when I first moved down here, I was afraid of butterflies and dragonflies. So that was going to be one of my questions. What do you do when you get the student that is not used to being out in nature? Like, how do you handle that student that is like, ew, nature, get it off me? That's something to be considered too.
It is. And all of our comfort zones are going to be different. So
Right.
when I do primitive camping, I try to tell people, like, that's no electric. That's not like a budget hotel. This is no electric, no running water primitive, and there's no bathroom.
Right.
But some people, and I will talk to them on the phone, and they want to be out in nature, but they're so afraid. Their fear level is so high.
Right.
People will say to me, oh my God, you have snakes.
Right.
And I'm like, do you want me to tell you the truth or what
Right.
you want to hear? Because we're talking 60,000 acres. Now they know that there's going to be some snakes within a 60,000 acre area. But people that are so incredibly fearful, I always tell them to go out on a guided walk with someone that is comfortable. The worst thing you could do is go out with somebody that's already has that same fear.
Right.
And sometimes that comfort level means that I tell them to go to Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary or 6 Mile Cypress Slough.
Right.
Those are areas that you're going to be on a boardwalk. You're sort of kind of in a cage, but you don't know that. You're still out.
Right.
But you're not in nature. So Crew has primitive trails. You're connected. And when I tell people Bird Rookery Swamp has gators, I mean, there are gators there. It's not unusual in a cold span of year to go out and do that loop and count 100 gators up on that tram. So you have to be okay with alligators, but sometimes that's not everybody's idea of nature.
Right.
I think you should push yourself outside of that box, just like you did, Lisa, growing up in an inner city like I did. But don't push yourself outside. Like, people would not do what Brenda Thomas and Jesse do just for fun.
Right.
Like, they get into the water, they think it's fun, they go swimming, they're in the deep depths of the swamp. That's not everybody's comfort zone. I'm right there with them. I like that too. But that doesn't mean you have to do that to connect with nature.
But you can learn to love that stuff. You can learn to love that stuff.
You can, but do it in little bits and pieces.
Correct.
Do it so big that you get so fearful. But even somebody that has an apartment and they have a patio, that's nature. Put a plan in and watch it.
Right.
You can have nature and connect with nature anywhere. You don't have to be at places like Crew.
Right. And I think that's what people think. People think they have to be like elbows deep, up to the eyebrows. Right.
No, not at all.
Right.
Just connect with where you can. And some people play golf and some people will say, well, that's not nature. I'm sorry. I just gotten an incredible video today from a golf course down in Naples from one of Brenda Thomas's fellow trustees. It came from Matt Taylor, an incredible bobcat. She looked like she had she's either nursing or about ready to give birth to kittens. And there it was. And it's a really great green corridor. It's wildlife habitat. It sure beats having cars in a parking lot.
True.
So we all connect in nature in a very different way.
Right.
I did get a question from Chosen asking about the guided trips. Like, how often are they? When are they?
This time of year, we do guided trips every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the different trails. We were doing a series on Saturdays, and then we also have bike trips. I think they're once a month or maybe twice a month. So just go to our website, crewtrust.org, or reach out to us. We're going to start to wind down. The season, we generally do season, which will be November through the end of April. We'll be
Like,
winding down. But
Yeah,
again, those trails are open to you throughout the year.
but they are hot in the summertime.
They're hot unless you get in the water, Lisa. Then it's real cool.
Oh, the water. Yeah, maybe.
All about water. It's all about water.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Brenda. Really. Does anyone else have any other questions?
No, this was great.
I loved it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. We really appreciate all your time. We appreciate you being a community partner with us and all the work that you do for not only the university and students, but our surrounding Southwest Florida community. So,
And my thanks to FGCU. You guys have been an incredible partner to us. You guys support us. And the students, we just absolutely love the students.
What's
So
not
come
to
one,
love
come
about
all.
crew? Thank you.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great night.
You too.